Bryce Elder looked better in a win over the Padres on Monday, which is good because Hurston Waldrep's going to get checked out by the doctors. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. Just a minute, I want to talk about last night's game. Bryce Elder looking better, what he did differently, right? Victor Mederos turning out to be a dog and somebody that you probably need to keep in a leverage role going forward or develop into more of a leverage role. And the one weird trick Atlanta got him to do that helped him unlock this better version of himself. But before we do that, Hurston Waldrep's season might be over. We don't know yet. All right, let's talk about this a little bit. We saw Hurston Waldrep in the majors. 3 appearances, didn't look great. Control wasn't really there, right? Walking too many guys, getting behind on guys, which meant he wasn't able to use that splitter. The Braves eventually optioned him back down to AAA, right? He has a rehab start on Sunday. And a lot of people, myself included, were really confused why he only went 3 innings, right? No runs, 2 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. He threw 36 pitches, 20 were for strikes, and then he came out of the game. Austin Gomber goes in, pitches the 4th. Then they go to Drew Hackenberg for a couple. Anthony Molina for a couple. They end up getting walked off. Joel Payamps gives up the walk-off hit in the 9th. But it turns out it's not anything good. This wasn't planned. This wasn't, they have him working on stuff. This was potential injury. Manager Walt Weiss said yesterday before the game, quote, anytime a pitcher has to remove himself from a game, you never think good things, but we'll see. And what Waldrep was dealing with on Sunday was, and stop me if you've heard this before, was a drop in velocity and a loss of control. So this season, and here's what's tough, is in the bullpens Waldrep was throwing, he was 97, 99 in single inning spurts. As a starter this year, he's been averaging 94 on his sinker, right? He's been averaging 91, 92 on his cutter. He's not throwing the 4-seamer. It's not a good 4-seamer, so I'm okay with that. But the point is, he's got the sinker sitting around 94. He's got the cutter sitting around 91, 92. And one, he struggled to get pitches in the zone in this outing. 36% zone rate overall. The cutter was at 36%. The sinker was at 67%. You feel good there. He threw 6 splitters. None of them were in the zone. That's fine. Whatever. That happens. That's okay. You don't need to throw the splitter in the zone. You just have to get ahead where you can use that. But in the final frame, Waldrep was throwing 89, 90 on the cutter. He maxed out in that final inning at 91.9 on the sinker, right? He was throwing, again, the cutter was below 90 miles an hour most of the time, 89.4, 89, 89.5. He did have a 90.3. But little drop of velo, a loss of control. He pulled himself from the game. He told them something didn't feel right. They pulled him out of the game. He's going to be evaluated. I want to be clear real quick on this because I know that it's going to be said. We don't know if Hurston Waldrep is dealing with a significant injury. We don't know if it's that. We don't know if this is some sort of fatigue or a mechanical thing, whatever. We don't know. But it doesn't look good. It doesn't sound good. This is usually when you have something like this, right? Usually when you're in a situation where you have a guy who is throwing a loss of control, which he already didn't have great control, a loss of control and lowered velocity, that is typically a sign of some sort of, that is one of the common precursors to a diagnosis of some sort of elbow injury involving the UCL. And I'm not saying that he has a UCL injury. I'm saying this is a common symptoms that we see in a guy who is eventually diagnosed with a UCL injury. There are people, let's talk about what we do know and don't know here, okay? One, we don't know if he is legitimately injured or not. Two, we don't know, and I would argue that we are pretty sure it's not the case. This is not any sort of result of being rushed back by Atlanta. I've seen a lot of people point to Waldrep as saying that he is now injured because we rushed him back, including people in the media. And we can refute that by pointing out that he had a very spring training-like ramp-up after the elbow surgery, right? He had a multi-week throwing program, somewhere like I think it was like at least a month. Started with catch, then pitching-like stuff with not on the mound, flat grounds, then progressing to the mound, then progressing to a bullpen, then BP, then a rehab assignment. He made 5 minor league appearances before we called him up, then made 3 appearances in the majors, then was optioned down, and then began showing signs of this injury. So arguing that we rushed him back and that's why he got hurt is a little bit reductive. Is it probably correct that he wasn't ready for the majors when we called him up? Yeah. The control wasn't back. We saw last year how long it took him to find his control. He was dreadful in the first 6 starts of the year. 7.04 ERA, 18 walks to 21 strikeouts in 23 innings, right? He was not good at all. And then in the beginning of May, and that was going back to the beginning of April, so it took him a little over a month. Second start in the month of May is when he started to figure it out. And he still had some clunkers, right? He got blown up by Nashville when he faced them for the 4th time in the season, but the 2nd time in a week. But from the second start of May on, his ERA in AAA was 3.54. And he walked 32 in 68 and 2/3 innings, right? It took him a little while to get into, one, the new sinker that Sean Murphy convinced him to throw, but also being comfortable on the mound, not walking a ton of guys and whatever. And from that point, then they called him up, and he looked pretty good. -1 clunker against the Astros. He had a 2.88 ERA for the Braves across, I can't count here, across 10 appearances, 9 starts, because you have to remember the Speedway Classic wasn't a start. He finished the resumed game. He just happened to come in the first inning. So we didn't rush him back. Doesn't mean he was ready from a command and control perspective. But from a physical perspective, it's hard to argue he wasn't ready to come back. And I think at the end of the day, people who are mad at Atlanta's strength and conditioning staff and training staff and everything are going, if Waldrep is in fact hurt, are going to take this as another data point that they are doing something wrong. And I can't really refute that other than saying, I don't think you can look at pitcher injuries and say, oh, it's definitely the fault of the training staff. Because if you do that, if you do point at pitcher injuries to say this organization is not good health-wise with their pitchers, right? Then you're in a situation where you probably should fire every training staff in baseball. Because every organization, for the most part, has guys who are out with an elbow injury. And some of them are really talented players. Cole Reagans. Hunter Green missed 101 days for the Reds. Right? Max Fried. Max Fried's been out for almost 60 days with an elbow issue. Nick Pivetta for the Padres. has been out 87 days with an elbow issue. Jose Barrios of the Blue Jays is out until next with a stress fracture in his elbow. Shane Bieber spent 90 days on the IL with an elbow injury. The Cubs have lost 7 pitchers, and half of them have gone down to elbow issues. If you judge a professional training staff off of pitcher injuries, you're just going to keep firing every single pitcher or every single training staff until there's nobody left to hire. That's pretty much where you are. The problem here is twofold. One, pitching is just very bad for you. One of the worst things you can do as a baseball player is choose to pitch. It is an unnatural motion. It is an unnatural delivery that requires you to go as close to max effort as possible. And I think the max effort thing is probably the biggest issue here, right? As average fastball velocities in baseball have increased, the delta between normal effort and max effort for pitchers has gotten smaller and smaller, as measured by their max velo versus how far away they are from that max velo in any specific outing, right? If a guy touches 99 in an outing, but he's sitting 97, 98, he's pitching pretty close to his max every single pitch. And in the old days, when guys never got hurt, that spread was bigger, right? One, the max was lower for a lot of guys. The spread was lower, right? If they averaged 90, if they were maxing out at 94, 95, they might be sitting 90, 91 normally. They were able to get by at 90% max intensity or 89, 85% or whatever and ramp it up when they had to. And then two, the people who say that pitchers back in the old days never got hurt, they had longevity. No, they did. You just don't remember them. It's survivorship bias, right? You don't remember the guy who came up and looked really good and then all of a sudden had dead arm and went to the minors and never came back. The first pitcher to be elected to the Hall of Fame after having Tommy John surgery is John Smoltz. That's how recent it's been where we've been able to get pitchers back from catastrophic elbow injuries. Smoltz had the surgery in 2000. He was elected in 2015. He's the first guy in history to go to the Hall of Fame after Tommy John surgery. So it's a survivorship bias thing. It's a way modern pitching is different kind of thing. And if Waldrep is injured and if Waldrep is out for a year and a half, he's back for 2028, it makes this trade deadline even tougher for the Braves because that's one less internal option they have. And AA did a giant media blitz. We had clips from SiriusXM. He also went on 680 The Fan. He also went on, I think it was 92.9 The Game. He went everywhere to talk about his approach to the trade deadline and what he's trying to work on. So one, thanks for taking our advice from Saturday morning, AA. I said you probably should do that. And I said it on Saturday morning. On Sunday, he went on one radio show. On Monday, he went on 2 more. But let's talk about what we saw last night from Bryce Elder, Victor Mederos. Let's talk about what AA said on these broadcasts and what to expect in the next 2 weeks. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode's brought to you by our friends at IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the tasty, low-sugar brain and body fuel that you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack's a great way to try all of the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom-infused coffees. And the Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, Text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. The Braves have not been getting long starts out of anybody not named Chris Sale. Bryce Elder righted that trend a little bit last night. He was able to give the Braves more than 6 innings. He faced a batter in the 7th inning. 5 hits, 2 runs. Both of them came on solo homers. And that second one was a leadoff homer to Ty France in the 7th that caused Walt Weiss to pull him from the game. He was only at 77 pitches. He could have pitched more, but and Walt Weiss said, nope, you did great. You gave us the length that we needed. He went to Danny Young. Danny Young got 2 outs, but also allowed a single, and that guy advanced all the way to third. And so Weiss called on Victor Mederos to clean it up. We're going to get to Mederos in a minute because holy cow, that was awesome. But this is now a couple different times that Bryce Elder has done this, where he's, I'm guessing deliberately, adjusted his pitch mix to try and be more efficient and get through outings quicker. I'm sorry, not get through outings quicker. Go deeper into these outings. I'm going to leave it in. And the thing that I noticed is it's at the expense of his strikeout rate. When he was at his best early in the season, right? He gave you 6 scoreless innings versus the Athletics. He gave you seven technically scoreless. It was 2 unearned runs in 7 innings in Arizona, right? He gave you quality starts against Detroit and Philly and Washington and all of that. A lot of those games saw him striking out 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. He had a 9 strikeout game against Seattle. He went 6 innings with 9 punchies. Not what happened last night. There's been a couple outings, and I'm thinking about the game versus Boston at home on a Saturday night when the whole pen was down, where he goes 8 innings, 3 earned runs. If I remember it, I think like 2 of those scored in that 8th inning, like solo shots or something. He only struck out 3, right? Last night, he strikes out 4 in 6 innings because he ramped back up the sinker usage. And he said, hey, I know that the best version of Bryce Elder as far as personal statistics has been the version that is aggressively going four-seam changeup and getting whiffs off of those pairings. But he went sinker pretty heavy last night. 36% usage as compared to in the season of like low to mid-20s. He cut back on the changeup. He cut back on the slider, right? Just trying to get quick and early outs to go deeper in the game to save the pin. And he did, right? He pitched into the 7th inning. He allowed 7 batted balls on the sinker. 1 of them was hard hit, and the average exit velocity off of the sinker was 78 miles an hour. Every single at-bat that he opened with a sinker opened with a strike. 7 for 7 on first pitch strikes with the sinker. He really did a good job of getting ahead of dudes and being able to let other things work. Sometimes he went to the cutter to get whiffs. He had 5 whiffs on 9 swings on the cutter, which is nuts. Usually cutters aren't really good whiff pitches like that, right? You're throwing a cutter, you're throwing it inside. If you're a righty, you're throwing it inside to a lefty on their hands. If you're throwing it against a righty, you're usually trying to throw it at them and then it comes and front doors them, or you're trying to elevate it and hoping they chase it and it's going to run off the barrel towards the edge of the zone, right? That's the usual usage of a cutter. He's getting whiffs with it, which is impressive. It's true that of the 2 home runs, one of them came on a sinker. He hung a sinker. The other one came on a slider that he hung, right? That was the one hard hit ball off the sinker was a terrible location. One of the 2 hard hit balls on the slider was a terrible location. And thankfully, because he only walked one guy, they were both solo shots. And Atlanta goes on to win this game. And again, it's a lot of that's Victor Mederos, so we're going to get there. But if you can get this version of Bryce Elder, it still doesn't do anything for you in the postseason, right? This is still not a profile I want to throw in October. I don't want to throw him against the Phillies at the bank or against the Dodgers or against the Brewers or whatever. But it gets you through the regular season into the postseason. And I do think that's important. And we've seen so many of Atlanta's starters not be able to give length recently that hopefully this version of Bryce Elder, right? You minimize the walks so that when you make mistakes, because every pitcher makes mistakes, nobody is going to be perfect with their locations across 6 innings and, math in my head here, 24 batters faced maybe. You can minimize the impact of those mistakes. Was impressed with what Bryce Elder did. Cautiously optimistic. We need to see more of it. And I'm not saying this should be your postseason guy, but I'm saying that this was good. You needed this from Bryce Elder. You got it. Really happy about that. Victor Mederos came in to clean up that 7th inning. And he did. He gave up a walk to Luis Campusano, pinch hitter, which meant runners were now on first and third. But then he turned around, he got a fly out of the number 9 hitter, Sun Moon Song. Got him to fly out to end the frame. They bring him back for the 8th, which you had to. Very small pin. I think we talked about this on yesterday's show. You had thrown all of your leverage arms. You had thrown all your leverage arms back-to-backs over the weekend. Very thin pin last night. Tyler Kenley is up and stretching and things like that. And I'm thinking, okay, they're going to ask Mederos to get the 8th. They're going to give Kenley the 9th. Yes, he got popped for a homer, and he's been like dreadful against lefties as far as homers are concerned. But they're going to ask him to get the 9th to get the save. Mederos gets through the top of the order for Anthopoulos Jr., Jackson Merrill, Manny Machado in 5 pitches. 5. He gets Tatis to ground out on the first pitch. He gets Merrill to pop out on the 3rd pitch. And he gets Machado to fly out on the first pitch. 5. So at that point, they sent him back out for the 9th. He does give up a single to Luis Rengifo with 1 out. But he gets a strikeout of Ty France, who hit one of those homers earlier. And if you listen to yesterday's scouting report, he's been like the hottest Padres hitter in the last couple weeks. I think he has something like 4 home runs in the last 5 games or whatever. He gets Xander Bogaerts to line out. Good play from Michael Harris to go get it in center. And then he induces a ground out to shortstop of Jake Cronenworth to end the game. First professional save. Never gotten one until last night. The broadcast talked to him after the game. And one, very grateful to the Braves that he was in the organization. They gave him some tips and a vote of confidence on his 4-seamer and asked him to throw it a lot more. He did. It worked out. Victor Mederos last night threw 55% 4-seamer. He needed 29 pitches to get 7 outs. But 55% 4-seamer. Got 3 whiffs on it. And it looked a little filthy, right? He averaged 97. He touched 99 with it. The shape isn't necessarily amazing or anything. But coming into last night's game, his usage of it on the season was like low 20%. He mained the 4-seamer last night. Backed it up with the cutter and a couple sinkers. Didn't throw the changeup at all. Didn't throw the sweeper at all. Didn't throw the slider at all. But Atlanta, this is the Atlanta acquisition thing. This is one of the things that they've done. We have multiple examples now of the Braves being able to see there's a guy that either has outlier results on a pitch that he's not using enough, or we believe biomechanically he can start to throw this pitch and it be successful for him. Grant Holmes, minor league free agent. They signed him. The whole reason they signed him was they wanted to give him a slider. Right-handed pitchers almost always have sliders. He didn't have one. The A's never gave him one. And apparently they said they didn't want his cutter to deteriorate by giving him a slider. They give him a slider, and it turns out Grant Holmes is really good at throwing a slider. It's his number one pitch now. But Atlanta found him after he was released by the A's because they got him to the majors because they gave him a slider. Pierce Johnson and Tyler Kinley were successful coming from Colorado to Atlanta because Atlanta had Pierce Johnson throw the curveball more. Atlanta had Tyler Kinley throw the slider more. Right? And now Victor Mederos, they thought his four-seamer could be a lot better than it was. And I misspoke. It was 18% usage entering last night. The Dodgers just stole from the Braves this same concept. They made a trade yesterday, the first kind of like non-DFA trade. They got a reliever from the Rockies in Seth Halverson, who is a four-seam slider splitter guy. He throws 99 miles an hour, but he walks a ton of dudes and doesn't get nearly the strikeouts because he struggles with with how to use everything and how to harness it. They grabbed him. I guarantee you one of the adjustments they're going to make is they're going to have him throw the slider more. It's four-seam slider splitter again, but he just dominates with a 99-mile-an-hour four-seamer that has ordinary shape, and he can't really reliably get it in the zone all the time. And they're going to back off the four-seam usage so that he can start throwing the slider more because it has outlier drop and is in the limited usage that he's thrown it. It is a very good pitch. 143 average allowed, 190 slug allowed. But he's throwing it like 20-something% of the time. This is part of trying to make your team better, is finding dudes who can be optimized in your organization. The Braves have done it multiple times. We're seeing the Dodgers do it with Halverson. He was on my list of guys I wanted the Braves to go get and do something with. High slot righty who throws gas. It's a joke at this point, but I honestly probably would have looked at giving him a sinker and a cutter so that you could do four-seam cutter slider, and then you could run the sinker off and develop the splitter a little bit. I would have looked at giving him more pitches, figuring out which of those two other fastballs would have been better for him. And I think that kind of whole thing, identifying bullpen pieces, identifying stuff like that. AA did some more media, and he touched on some of this. And I want to talk about it. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. There was a trend line going through a lot of AA's conversations with Atlanta area radio yesterday that I want to make sure we touch on. It really feels like Alex is concerned that they are not going to find a playoff caliber starter. That's my analysis. That's not his words. But when you listen to a lot of these conversations, and when you look at, or when you listen to some of what he's saying, when he talks about reinforcing the bullpen, and the goal in the postseason is mapping out 27 outs. The goal in the postseason is not necessarily we need this guy to give us 6 innings. The goal is mapping out 27 outs. It really feels like with 2 weeks for the deadline that he is not confident that there will be very many playoff caliber starters available. And he said on Sunday, if a playoff caliber starter comes available, he's going to jump on it. And I do think that that is still the team's goal here, right? That is still what he wants to do. He wants to add a starter. That while I want the Braves to get a playoff caliber starter, and if there are a handful of guys who get moved at the deadline and the Braves don't come away with any of them, I'm going to be disappointed. You can piece this together without that. It's a lot riskier. It's a way riskier. And I want the Braves to come away with one. And yesterday, on 680 The Fan, the Braves said no prospect is off, or sorry, AA said there's no prospect off limits. There's one player the Braves would, quote, have an extremely difficult time moving, who I'm assuming is Eric Hartman. Given how he shot up into top 50s and is tracking like he could theoretically be a top 25 prospect in baseball. But for the most part, the organization is not protecting any of the there is no sacred cows here. And something that I haven't talked about this a lot in depth. I haven't written about it a lot in depth, but something that I've personally believed when it comes to prospects is that prospect hugging is pretty dumb, right? I've seen some people making trade deadline lists and they have 6, 7, 8 untouchable prospects. And I think what that does is two negative things. One, it severely limits the caliber of player you can go get because you're significantly limiting the pool of resources you have to go get a guy. But two, the vast majority of prospects that get traded don't end up being impactful major leaguers. And that's an unfortunate reality that a lot of people don't think about when they make their untouchable list, right? Mookie Betts trade, right? February 2020, the Dodgers get Mookie Betts and David Price from the Boston Red Sox. It was a 3-team deal, right? It wasn't just those two teams. The Twins got Kenta Maeda and cash. The Dodgers get Betts and Price. The Red Sox get 3 players. They get shortstop Jeter Downs. And if you have never heard of Jeter Downs, it is entirely understandable that you've never heard of Jeter Downs. He got 41 plate appearances for Boston. He hit 154. And that was in 2021. And then he moved to Washington. He got 9 plate appearances for Washington in 23. Then he was in the Yankees AAA system for a while. And he spent the last 3 seasons in Japan. They got catcher Connor Wong, who is a major leaguer. He is still with Boston. He is a career 249 hitter with a career 377 slug. He's got 24 home runs in 393 games. He's a major leaguer. He's not an impactful one. He did have one really good season. 24, he hit 280 with a 758 OPS. But he's not been very good. And the third guy they got was Alex Verdugo. And of course, what happened to Mookie Betts? They extended Mookie Betts. And he's been a centerpiece of their team. We can keep going with just the Red Sox. The Red Sox trade Rafi Devers to the Giants. Jordan Hicks, Kyle Harrison, and then two prospects, righty Jose Bello and outfielder James Tibbs. They've since moved Kyle Harrison. They've since moved James Tibbs. Deal didn't work out. Look at Atlanta's trades. Look at the Matt Olson deal. The only trade or the only player in the Matt Olson deal who worked out for the A's when they acquired him is Shea Langoliers. Ryan Cusick didn't work out. Joey Estes didn't work out. Christian Pache didn't work out. The only player that worked out was Shea Langoliers. And they still haven't won anything with him, and they're considering trading him right now. We can do more of this. The Sean Murphy deal. The team that's had the best outcomes here is the third team in the deal with the Brewers getting William Contreras. But Esteury Ruiz goes to the A's. Well, guess what? He's no longer in the A's. He was not an impactful player. Royber Salinas went to the A's. He came back to the Braves. Kyle Muller went to the A's. Not impactful, gone. Manny Pena, veteran catcher. I think he retired after that season. Freddie Tarnok didn't work out. The A's sent Joel Payamps to the Brewers. He's in Atlanta system now. We saw him a little bit, I think last year or this year, whatever it was. Most prospect trades, the prospects end up not panning out. And so probably the correct approach to have, one, is erring on the side of making your untouchable list really small. I think the best that you could reasonably do here, if you were making a Braves untouchable list, Eric Hartman, you could make an argument for Cam Caminiti. You could make an argument for Tate Southesine. And I think the Tate Southesine one is only if you think he is a shortstop. And opinions are mixed. Some people think he is. Some people think he's not. I think anything more than that, and you are setting yourself up for not being able to make the deal for the few players that are available. And again, if the Braves end up not actually being able to get a starting pitcher, and I think that honestly, Joe Ryan would be perfect if he gets moved. He's going to cost a fortune, but you can work it out with other guys like Michael Soroka. I think would be really interesting to bring back, right? You can find utility out of a guy with stuff like a Dustin May if the Cardinals decide to sell, right? So much of this is going to depend on the final weekend before the trade deadline. But being willing to part with some of these players that we've all grown attached to is probably the only way to actually be able to get the deal done if a frontline starter becomes available. And we have heard AA, in essence, warn us of that. It really sounds like he doesn't expect very many frontline starters to be available, many impact starters to be available. And so we're going to have to see, one, what AJ Smith-Shawver looks like. Two, if you can get Spencer Schwellenbach back into a starting pitcher by the end of the season, what you can get out of anybody who's currently on the roster, right? Can you double up a Ronaldo Lopez and Grant Holmes to give you 5 innings and get to a pin? And then even if you do get a starter, you probably still should try to bolster your bullpen so that if you need to shorten a game, you can shorten a game. And I went and pulled the NLDS schedule. You have off days after games 1, 2, and 4. So if you have to piece together a start between a Raylo and a Holmes or an AJ Smith-Shawver and a Holmes and then go to the pen to get 4 innings of work out of the pen, or if you have to do an AJ Smith-Shawver gets you through the order once and then you do 5 or 6 out of the pen, if you go add a high leverage reliever and bring back Robert Suarez and continue developing Victor Mederos, you could see how that could work, right? You could see how you could go to AJ Smith-Shawver for 3, and then you could go to Victor Mederos for 2, and then you could throw Suarez and Fuentes and Lee and trade deadline acquisition and Iglesias, and you could get through an outing and win in the postseason. Would I rather have a frontline starting pitcher? Yes. Absolutely. I'd rather have a Joe Ryan or a Casey Mize or a Reed Detmers. I would take Reed Detmers if he was available. He is absolutely a more fluctuating up and down kind of guy, right? He has good outings, he has bad outings. But I absolutely would take a Reed Detmers. But if you can't get one, there is still a path. It's just a lot harder. Because the more pitchers you throw, throwing multiple bullpen guys means there's more risk. Because if one guy doesn't have it, it can derail the plan. And the more guys you throw, the more chances you have for one guy to not have it and derail the whole plan. And again, none of this matters if you don't hit. None of this matters if the offense is awful. I had somebody tell me that Alex Anthopoulos was to blame for the 2023 Atlanta Braves being beaten 3-1 in the NLDS by the Phillies because AA didn't reinforce the rotation when you lost a couple guys in the final week of the season. And I'm like, brother, you hit 186 with a 264 slug. Literally the greatest offense we've probably ever seen in Major League Baseball history went 24 for 129. It wouldn't have mattered if you had vintage Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, and Pedro Martinez if you were hitting 186 against the Phillies. So there's a chance we're going to be disappointed at the trade deadline. I really want a frontline starter. I do think there's multiple ways to piece it together. It does appear that AA is cognizant of the fact you need one. Is he going to get criticized if we get one? Or if we don't get one? Absolutely he will. Will some people criticize him if we get one, but it costs a lot and we have to give up promising prospects? They'll criticize him there too. At the end of the day, I don't care. I just want to win. And I don't care how we win. It doesn't mean more to me if you win by getting a frontline starting pitcher and getting 6 innings of 2-run ball in the postseason and then turn it to the pen versus if you go with a guy for 3, go with another guy for 2, and then the bullpen carries it the rest of the way. I don't care how you win. I just want to win. We'll see in the next 2 weeks what style that's going to take. That'll do it for Braves Today for Tuesday, July 21st. Another episode where I didn't plan on going 45 minutes, and we did, so enjoy the free content. You're welcome there. We'll be back this afternoon with a scouting report before Game 2. Ronaldo Lopez is the starter today for the Braves. Hopefully we can see a little more swing and miss out of him so that we can better envision him as being a playoff caliber guy when we get there. So we'll have that conversation this afternoon, and then back tomorrow with another episode to talk more about the season, the trade deadline, Atlanta signing all of their draft picks on Monday, and what's going to happen here. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.